Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's program, part of the webinar series, Your Career in Transition. I'm Greg Stevens from Purple Cow Career and Talent Development. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time in the series, welcome. And for those of you who have joined us in previous programs, welcome as well. If you would please take a moment to make sure you're on mute and that your video is turned off. I should have all of you on mute. All righty. We're going to get started with our program. As many of you know, we're near the end of our 8-part series on your career in transition. And of course, today we're talking about cover letters, and we'll jump into that content in just a moment. I'm really excited to have joining us again for our program today, my colleague and friend, Jose Ortiz, who is the Chief Operating Officer at MoMA PS1 in Queens, New York. Hello, Jose, welcome.
Hi, Greg. Nice to be here. Hello, everybody.
You're like a special guest on 2 episodes of a TV show, right? You get 2 times. It's great. And we're going to hear from Jose. Yes, you made it past the pilot. We're definitely going to hear from Jose from a couple of perspectives, from somebody who's been in the field for a long time and has probably written many cover letters, but also somebody who is in an executive position who has looked at a number of cover letters coming across his desk. So Jose, thanks so much. For those of you who have been a part of our program all series, you will recall that we addressed where people are in their career transition. Some of you may be perfectly fine, employed, things are going okay. Some of you may just been furloughed or laid off, or you're working from home because your institutions are closed. Some of you may be career changers and maybe not sure which way to go, or you may have some idea of a pathway and a map in hand, so to speak. Or some of you may simply be anxious about what the future holds, and I think a lot of us are in that category. We also talked earlier in the series about how each of us are on various stages of grief about our career transition or life in general. And Marcia Semmel, you may recall, reminded us that we are indeed in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. So all of this is a backdrop for where we are in our careers. We also have talked a lot about relationships and how important they are, not only for ourselves personally, but also where we are in our careers and our institutions, and how important it is to keep those relationships strong now more than ever. We talked briefly about 6 skills for leaders at all levels, meaning wherever you are in your organization or as you think about applying for jobs, these are the kind of skills that you really need to be focusing on: strategic agility, relationships, communication, data fluency, prototyping, and systems leadership, or seeing the big picture. We talked about how those macro skills align with a number of the skills and competencies that we're seeing in the workplace across fields and across organizations. Skills and competencies like critical thinking and problem solving, data literacy and technology fluency, creativity and collaboration. These are the skills that people are looking for, and the skills that you all need to be communicating in your materials, whether it's your resume, your cover letter, your interviews, your online profile, or just how you behave in a workplace environment. We also gave you a couple of quick tips on how you can turn your lists of things you're good at and passionate about, codify them, and turn them into a brand for yourself, a way of telling your professional story. We talked about those of you who are applying for jobs need to really pay attention to the job description and really tackle those key words and phrases that appear in a job description, and how you need to use those exact keywords and phrases in your own materials, meaning your resume and your cover letter. We talked about the reason for that is often your materials may or may not be seen by a human being. It may be reviewed by an applicant tracking system that has been programmed to catch keywords from the position description. Or in the case of it being reviewed by a human being, they too may be programmed, so to speak, to identify those keywords or phrases. So all the more reason for you to be able to tackle those specific phrases in your materials. Last time we talked about resumes and how this is a great opportunity for many of you to start marking up your resume, whether it's good old-fashioned paper and pen or something that you're doing through a Word document online or whatever your platform happens to be. Now's a great time to brush up on that. And we also talked about how your resume and your cover letter are both intended to help you get the interview. That's really their primary purpose. So today we're going to shift our focus to conquering your cover letter. We're going to talk a little bit about the general purpose of a cover letter. We'll talk a little bit about the structure and format of your cover letter. And we're going to also talk about the content, what you write in your cover letter and how you write it. And there's lots of things we could talk about cover letters, but these are the three that we're going to focus on in our program today. So to get us started, I would love to find out from you all in the chat box if you think you need a cover letter. Not everybody thinks you do. So go ahead and type yes, no, or it depends into the chat box, and let's see what you all have to say. So let's see, Jose, it depends. Some people say it depends. For those of you who are saying it depends, tell me what it depends on. Some of you are saying yes, always, yes, 100%. Yes, can't hurt. Yes, it depends, most definitely. Okay, it depends. Gilby, thanks for joining us again, Gilby. Gilby says it depends on the type of application, as it could be for a different kind of job you're applying for. Joanna says if the opportunity comes to you through networking, it may not be necessary. Dina says whether they ask for one or not. Jen, yeah, federal postings. What do you see, Jose?
Well, I think, you know, from where I'm sitting, I find the cover letters to be incredibly helpful because it is, again, another snapshot of someone's skills, but it also, I would say that someone can communicate. And so it already starts to set a tone of the rest of the material that you're going to read. So I agree that in some instances it doesn't allow you to do one, but if the opportunity is available, I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah, I agree. Certainly for those of you who commented about federal positions through USA Jobs, for example, a cover letter really isn't part of the application package. But aside from that, having a cover letter with your materials is generally good practice for all the reasons that, Jose, you just described. It is an opportunity to not only talk about who you are and what you are able to do professionally, but it's a writing sample. It communicates how you communicate in writing. For those of you who said whether or not they ask for one, I think that's risky. So if they don't ask for one, or if they say no cover letter necessary, that's different than them just saying submit your resume. If they're saying submit your resume, absolutely always include a cover letter. And I think Grace said something about they will turn away from an application with no cover letter. So if you haven't followed the instructions or haven't put together a complete package, that's a red flag. Yeah, I think these are all really interesting comments. So thanks for taking a moment to respond to the chat box. Let's jump right into what a cover letter is. And I have a few talking points here, and Jose, at any point you want to jump in, please feel free to do so.
Okay.
But the first point that we want to make here is that there is no such thing as a generic cover letter. I know early on in my career, I found it much more convenient to have a boilerplate cover letter and just drop in an organization or a job title into an existing cover letter. And I thought that was enough. I'm here to tell you, and I think Jose would also tell you, that there is no such thing as a generic cut and paste cover letter. So if that's you, then you all need to not do that anymore. One other big point that I see a lot of my colleagues make a mistake on, and that is that the cover letter doesn't match up with the resume material in terms of its look and its feel, its formatting, and its style. So because these are both part of one package, your cover letter and your resume go hand in hand, they need to look the same. So the header needs to look the same. The font style needs to look the same. The font size, the margin size, all of it needs to look exactly the same as if it were belonging to one whole package. Any comments you have on that, Jose?
No, I think that again, it's part of the presentation, right? It's like, you know, like you wouldn't go to a job interview with your hair not combed, right? So this is the same concept, that it's part of your presentation. And I mentioned this in the other one, it's your foot in the door, right? And you want to put your best foot forward.
Right, absolutely. One other main point that we'd like to make is that this is a business letter. So you need to use a formal business style. If you aren't familiar with how to write a business letter, you can certainly Google how to write a business letter. And there's a fairly standard style and format for writing business letters. So this is a business exchange. This is a business communication. Now that said, this is an opportunity for you to make it somewhat personal, but not too personal. This isn't a breezy email or a text message kind of communication. Within the structure of it being a formal business letter, you do want to have it relate something of your personality. And I think, Jose, you talked about that a little bit in our conversation about resumes and in preparing for this program today, that this is your foot in the door. So share a little bit of something about yourself within reason. Also, it should go without saying that your cover letter needs to be well written. And as Jose pointed out, this is an opportunity for you to demonstrate your skill in written communication. So this needs to be good grammar, no typos, no other kinds of formatting errors. This is your opportunity to show perfection. It does need to be brief. Now, we have lots of conversations back and forth with several of our colleagues that a cover letter should be 1 page. Maybe it can be 2 pages. I got into a heated debate with a colleague of mine who insisted that a 2.5 page cover letter was the only way she was able to communicate everything that she needed to communicate about herself professionally. And my comment back might be, well, Jose, what would your comment be?
My comment is about, again, the ability to communicate what you need to communicate on 1 page. I certainly have reviewed cover letters that are 4 and 5 pages long. And for the most part, we stop reading it after the first page and then just go to look at the resume for skill sets. But it also, again, for me is, I don't know if this is the time to talk about pacing, Greg, about the organization's pace, but in my instance at PS1, where we work at a very fast pace, right? So we expect you to come in and work at that pace as well. And if you have taken 5 pages to write a letter, it gives me the impression that you're not able to work at that pace because you're not able to communicate in brevity and get your point across with less words.
Good point. Good point. That actually is a great lead in to this next bullet point, which is making the connection or making the bridge. The primary purpose of your cover letter is to create a bridge between who you are, what you know how to do, and what you have done, what you are capable of doing, and a bridge to what the organization needs, what the organization is about, what the organization values, and what this job requires. So that's a pretty key premise here that sometimes my colleagues seem to forget. This is not a rehashing of your resume, but it needs to be a bridge between you and this job and this organization. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. A couple of other tips for you in thinking about your cover letter generally. Minimize the use of I. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to talk about yourself. Obviously, it's your cover letter, your career, your application materials. So using I is okay, as long as you're contextualizing it within the parameters of what you can do for the organization, what I can do with and for your organization, so that it's not just all about I. Another tip for you is to use active voice, so that again, you put this in the context of what you've accomplished, what impact you've had, and what you can do for the organization. So if you don't know about active voice, it's really a way of phrasing sentences so that they are in fact more active. Instead of saying the program was facilitated, you would say, I facilitated the program, just as a quick example. A next to last tip for you is to proof. So often we are hustling to apply to jobs that the deadline is Tuesday or Friday or whatever the day is. And so we're in a hurry to get these out the door, and we don't take the time to review them. And I don't know about you, Jose, but I have to have somebody else look at my material before I send it out, because inevitably I will have missed something. I've missed a typo or format of some sort.
Agree. And sometimes even, our dependency on spell check, sometimes some words that are specific to our field may not come out the right way, or just, based on the way the word is being used in the sentence, a spell check may not pick up the right one. So definitely it's another set of eyes looking at it.
That's right. And not just for grammatical or typographical errors, but just for tone and message generally. And we're going to talk, Bela, you have a question about active voice and minimizing I statements at the same time. We'll talk about that in a moment, but it's a good question. The last thing I want to point out here is follow-up. This is going to be something we talk about in a moment, but the closure of your cover letter is really an opportunity for you to indicate how you will follow up. And you should follow up, but we're going to provide a little bit of caution about how you can go about doing that. Okay, so we're going to get into the structure and the format of your cover letter, starting with the first paragraph. If you think about this as an essay, you've got an introduction and a conclusion, and then you've got the main body. So this is, a cover letter is really no different. Your first paragraph is an introduction and should include specifically why you are writing, for what position you're applying, where you learned about it, or who you heard about this job from, and some kind of relevant hook that lets the reader know that this is something I should read a little further on. So again, the first paragraph is why you were writing, for what position, where you learned about it, and a relevant hook. So this would be an opportunity, if you all happen to have a cover letter on hand, take a look at your cover letter and see if you've got these indicated. Have you mentioned why you're writing? Have you mentioned the position you're applying for? Have you mentioned where you heard about it, whether it was from a colleague or AAM's Job HQ job board, wherever you happen to learn about it, and some little hook that encourages the reader to read on to the rest of your cover letter. Here's a couple of examples. This happens to be mine from a job I applied for several years ago in my hometown of San Diego. And this is the first paragraph. So let's just take a moment and look at this. And based on the criteria that I just laid out for you, why I'm applying, the position I'm applying for, how I heard about it, and a little hook. They don't have to necessarily be in that order, as they are not in this particular paragraph. But let's take a look and see what we've got here. In fact, I lead off with how I heard about it. I learned about this job from the current director, Paige Simpson, who suggested I apply for the position. That was an important first line for me so that they knew that I was a colleague. I also indicate that I'm applying for the Balboa Park Learning Institute director position. So it's clear that I'm applying for this position. Then I provide a bit of a personal hook, but personal and professional, because I grew up in San Diego, Balboa Park, which is the cultural hub of the city, where there are 30 or so museums and theaters and cultural institutions. That was a part of my life since I was a kid. So that was important. Another important message that I put in here, let me back up here, is talking about all the activities that I engaged in over the years in Balboa Park, and in particular about the 1915 Panama, California Exposition. This was particularly important in this job application because this position I was applying for would have been responsible for coordinating the activities of all the cultural institutions in Balboa Park around the centennial celebration of Balboa Park. So celebrating 100 years of this park based on that was an important message for me to communicate. Another quick example for you all, a slightly different tone, a slightly different layout. But if you take a look, this is somebody applying for a position of a program officer at a cultural trust, basically a grant-making organization. This person has indicated the job they're applying for right up front. They've given us a little bit of a hook about why this job, why I'm writing. This job excites me because it offers an opportunity to work with nonprofits within my area of expertise and interest, and my interest in lifelong learning. Up front, in the first paragraph, we get to know a little bit about this individual. We also get to know a little bit more as we go on. And this person has made the connection immediately as an introduction to the cover letter between what this person knows how to do and what this person has experience doing and what this particular job is asking for. So Jose, I'm going to pause there for a moment and see if you have any comments or observations about those.
Well, I mean, I think they're both good examples, and there are different techniques to get to this, you know, to get the message across. And I think it's another important point, right? That there's no sort of cookie cutter formula here to do that. And that, you know, the message, again, when someone's reading this, I think in either instance, you can see that someone put the effort into this, but also adding that personal connection of how they are connected to the organization, or how, you know, what is their thoughts of the organization. So I think that's really good. And I think that, you know, for me, the point just to make across this is that there isn't a generic format to follow here, and that, again, it should be specific to that job. And these all require an effort, you know, to get there. This isn't going to be as simple as, let me just use this template, because it won't always work that way.
Yeah, and just like we were talking about resumes, there is no one right way to do it. So here's a couple of examples, but you could go online and there might be 1,000 examples of cover letter templates. And so what we're providing you here is just a general framework to get the information communicated from you to the organization. As we move along into the main body, here this might be a second paragraph or maybe a second and third paragraph. And as I mentioned before, here's where you highlight your skills and experience that are relevant to this job, how you're communicating, how you're articulating why you and your experience and your skills are a good fit for this job and this organization. Again, this is really the critical component of your cover letter as a bridge between you and the institution. And this is another opportunity for you to restate why you're seeking this job at this time. And again, this isn't about you. This isn't about what you need. It's about your opportunity to contribute to the success of this institution through this job if you were to get hired. So that's just a general set of tips. I'm going to jump into a couple of examples. This is the main body of my cover letter for this Balboa Park job. This is full screen, and so it's probably reading like a lot of text for you. But the point I want to make here is, well, actually a couple of points. One is the items that I've chosen, again, my approach for this job was to divide my main paragraph into 4 sections. And these 4 sections directly related to key themes and phrases and keywords that I lifted directly from the job posting. So for those of you who have been in previous webinars in this series, we talked about very specific skills and how important it is to align your skills with what the job posting is asking for and to use those specific words. Well, here's another example of that. In this case, the organization was looking for somebody who could step in, realize new ideas, programs, initiatives in support of the centennial celebration of Balboa Park. They were also looking for somebody who could build on existing organizational strengths by helping others in the park to achieve success. They were also looking for somebody who could bring resources together from multiple stakeholder groups for common purpose. And they were looking for somebody who had a balance between big picture strategy with attention to on the ground operational details. So these are words that I lifted directly from the job posting. Now what I've done here is illustrate each of those. So I lifted those from the job posting, but I gave a couple of examples from my own background in each of these areas. And then the last sentence of each section is the bridge. Here's what I've done, and here's what I can do for you. I've done this, I can contribute this to your organization. I'm committed to building on BPLI's successful training programs. I would develop and expand BPLI programs. I envision exploring how park colleagues and other partners can come together. And I would, I'm looking down at the bottom here, I would bring this entrepreneurial spirit and practicality to BPLI. So in each of these sections, I've provided some background, but then I've made the bridge so that it's easier for the person reviewing my application to see that there is connectivity. I don't know, Jose, if you have any comments on this one. Helen, to your answer, in fact, I made it through 3 rounds of interviews. I was a finalist for this position. I made it through actually a screening interview, a phone interview, a Skype interview, actually a Skype panel interview, and then they flew me out for a day-long set of interviews with various stakeholder groups. So yeah, so something worked, but I didn't get the job. So there we go, that happens. Jose, anything that you have to say here?
No, I like the idea of again, looking at making that bridge, right? Of saying, this is what your organizational needs are, and this is how I can help them. I like that concept a lot. And I think you know, we've talked about this before on the resume workshop, and you know, I'll say it again here, is that you have to also keep in mind, right, the person reading this. So you want to keep them interested in reading your letter further, but you know, it also has to be, in a way, you have to make it a bit easier for them. And this makes it easier for me to look at those skills and say, oh, let me see what you have to develop or to bring in those areas. So I think I like it because it just is very, very clear.
Yeah, and I admit I packed an awful lot into this cover letter. If I
You
were to go
did.
back and do it, I might trim it back a little bit, but I was committed to making a successful attempt at this interview, which I did. So there we go. Here's another example, borrowing from a cover letter of a colleague. And again, as Jose pointed out, there is no template. There's no right way of doing it. This is just another opportunity for somebody to see what your bridge is, right? So here is this particular this individual applying to a job. This is the grant making organization. And so what this person has done in this main body of the cover letter is gotten at some very specific sets of skills and experiences, both sides of the grant making process, both as a grantor and a grantee. So I look at this, and I haven't specifically pulled out any key phrases here. I wonder, Jose, as you look at this, you've certainly been a part of grant writing processes before.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's words here that are catching my attention. And again, I would look at this and look at those words that are highlighted, right? About both sides of the equation, reviewed grant requests. And, I would circle those words to then find more meaning in the resume, right? That several dozen actually means 36 resumes, right? And that it's quantified somewhere else, but it's enough to make me want to look deeper into the candidate and see, how they validate each of those statements.
Yeah, and for me, one of the key takeaways from this section is this last sentence of this main section of the cover letter. These skills, the skills that I've just described, are paired with the ability to build strong relationships with diverse community groups, boards, organizations, donors, and other stakeholders to enrich communities. That's really what this job is all about. And so this section leads off and ends with this bridge, if you will. So this last paragraph is an opportunity for you to really seal the deal, if you will, to really sell it home, a closing hook of some sort, some bit of information that's compelling, maybe a little bit personal, but not overly personal. An opportunity for you to indicate that you will follow up and how you will follow up. And we'll talk about that in a second. An opportunity for you to offer some work samples. So for example, if they're asked you for 3 essays, then you let them know that you completed the 3 essays attached. Or if you have a writing sample, here's an opportunity for you to perhaps share something with them that they might find interesting, relevant to the position you're applying for. Certainly an opportunity for you to enumerate information that specifically pertains to the job. So for example, if there's a lot of issues about people asking for salary requests, salary requirements, if that's what they've asked for, then that's what you need to provide to them. And I don't want to get us distracted by that conversation because that's a whole program in and of itself. Certainly, if you have a LinkedIn profile or a website, something that you can refer to, please post that in there and make it easier for the reader to find you. They're going to find you anyway. Sorry about that, folks. We're back. And certainly it goes without saying that you should thank the reader for their time. As Jose mentioned previously, people are busy, they don't have a whole lot of time, and so you want to be able to be gracious and professional in thanking them. So here's a close-up of my closing paragraph. And again, remember a hook of some sort to capture their attention, and a little bit of reminder of something, other material I might provide them, and my online profile and my thanks. In this case, I indicate that I, in fact, have a watercolor painting of Balboa Park hanging in my apartment as a reminder of how important Balboa Park is to me. It's personal, but not too personal. It really demonstrates a real connection to Balboa Park. I also let them know that I will reach out to them to discuss my qualifications and potential contributions in the near future. I haven't said next week or next month, but I've left it open enough so that I can reach back out to them without stalking. And Jose, you might have some opinion about that. Certainly talking about the 3 essays. They requested that I write these 3 essays as writing samples, and so they are attached. And then I also let them know that they can learn more about me on my LinkedIn profile, which they're going to find anyway, but now I've just told them how to find it directly. And then, of course, my thank you. So, Jose, what's your thought about this as a closing paragraph?
I like it. I mean, I think the idea here is also agree with you that the idea of putting something in there that is the, you know, another hook or like the personal, or how you make the connection with your organization, I think is really important.
Okay.
I can tell you that one
we
of
may
the
have lost Jose.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay, we'll move on then, and hopefully Jose gets back with us shortly.
Can you hear me now? I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me? Everyone says they can hear me except you, Greg.
Sorry about that, Jose. I see that you're with us.
Okay.
My apologies.
Can you hear me now, Greg?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to say that the idea of putting something personal in there or some way that you connect with the organization, I think it's super important. I think back to a letter many years ago when I worked in a museum that was like within a park, and you had to walk through the park to get into the museum. And we as employees had to walk that every day. And someone in their letter talked about the idea of, you know, walking through this park and going to work every day. And it was a moment that everyone at the museum was like, oh my God, you know, everyone connected with it, right? From the hiring manager to every person that saw that letter. So I think it's important to do that. The idea of saying, yes, I'm available to talk to you and tell you more about what I have to offer, I think it's really good. The question about follow-up, I would say that, again, it's about following instructions, because many organizations now will say, please no phone calls, no, you know, because the people that are, you know, reviewing this material are reviewing so much that they wouldn't, they may actually find that as a bother than someone trying to connect. So I just think it's important to follow the instructions that are on the application.
Well, and also, again, to not be a stalker, right? We're all a little bit anxious about submitting material, and then we don't hear back in a week or 2 weeks or a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting a clear sense of when's the right time to follow up.
Yeah, it's challenging on both ends. I have to tell you, because it could be that, again, you don't know what's happening at the organization. I mean, they could be waiting to accumulate and say, once we get 50, we're going to go through the pile. Or, you know, the few that come in are not that strong, and you may see a position reposted again, you know, at another time. So it is a bit of a balance there. And certainly if you know someone, you could check in with them. But I think sometimes checking blindly is not, you know, the way to go. I mean, the good thing is if you check blindly, someone may say, well, let's just tell you that you didn't get it, just to sort of bring that to closure, right? But yeah, I agree with you. There's a moment of a stalkery moment in there that is uncomfortable on both ends of that for sure. And Greg, to your comment about LinkedIn, I totally agree with you. I mean, more than likely the organization will do some research on you as well. And that should be just as up to date as all of your material is. And again, a picture of you on a water slide probably is not the most appropriate picture for LinkedIn, but that information should be current as well.
Right, and the message that you're sending in your cover letter and your resume should be reflected in your online profile. Doesn't have to be the exact same words, the exact same bullets, but it should be a consistent representation of you so that anybody looking, and they will look, sees you as somebody who is paying attention to details, somebody who is an effective communicator, and that what you're presenting in your application materials is authentic, is a little bit more authentic to who you are.
And Greg, just one more point on that, if I can add one more thing. That sometimes people reference like, you know, like you reference in yours, the exhibition. People will reference an exhibition or saying that they visited the museum, but you have to remember, you have to be able to substantiate that if you're meeting in person. Like someone may say, I saw this exhibition and I really enjoyed it. It's not uncommon for the interview, at an interview, for someone to ask you, what was your favorite object in that exhibition? So if you did, I mean, it's about being honest here, right? And make sure that you can substantiate what you're writing.
No, I think it's critical. So a couple of things I want to, Jose, ask you for your opinion here. We've got a few sample cover letters. This one in particular is a sample that we included in our book, A Life in Museums, that I co-edited with Wendy Luke. And so I brought this one up because I know that you've been in a number of executive positions, and this is somebody applying for a position of executive assistant to the director. And based on what we've talked about, what are your thoughts about this letter?
So, you know, that in the second paragraph where there's a lot of skills pointed out there that are, again, good skills to have for an executive assistant, I would, again, probably circle those skills and then find those on the resume, right? To make sure that they're explained, that they're further explained. I do like it. I like the closing of it as well, that it's a salary requirement, and again, that it's in a range so that it's not, you know, again, it doesn't pull you out completely. I mean, some people do write, you know, the same thing about I'm looking for something in this range. So it doesn't pull you out of the running if it's too high or too low, or that you can say I'm willing to negotiate, right? To not throw you out completely. But I like it. I think it points out a lot of skills. It doesn't go into some of the specificity that I think is helpful for some of these up front. But it nonetheless makes me want to learn more about this candidate.
Well, I'm looking at Joanna's comment from a few minutes ago, and she asks, what would your hook be if this were through skills rather than a personal visit? So in this case, I'm looking at this closing paragraph as a bit of a hook that is skills focused, right? That this person is indicating that they are organized, self-motivated, can work on multiple projects simultaneously. These are the kinds of words you might recall from our last session where they're a little bit cover letter. they actually are a more personal approach. You certainly wouldn't want to use these words in a summary statement on your resume, for example. But in this case, the hook is the skills, which I rather like. And Jen, you asked a question here about how you can demonstrate a personal connection to the museum if you've never visited because it's far away or you weren't referred to somebody. What do you think, Jose?
Well, I think that's where you can demonstrate that you've done research on the organization. So you can certainly spend time on the web and get as much information as you can. But again, if there are themes in the work that they're doing that resonate with you, like, you know, someone looking at the MoMA PS1 website could be talking about your programs on, you know, people being incarcerated, on sex workers. Like, I think you can develop a theme, you know, that goes through this thread, right? Of in these are the things that I'm seeing on your website, but more specifically, how you connect with the work that the organization is doing. I don't think the site visit, I think, is certainly helpful because you have firsthand experience, but I think it's about connecting with the organization, and that if you can demonstrate that you can connect by just looking at the information on the web and following those programs, that's another way of getting your message across.
Thanks, Jose. And here's another example of a cover letter from an emerging colleague applying for a position at a botanical garden as assistant curator of exhibitions and collections manager. So, Jose, I know you worked in a variety of types of museums in your career. When you see this, tell me what your first reaction is.
Well, I firmly believe, sounds like a wow, it's a bit strong. That's beyond the assertive voice, but yeah, I mean, this is also in that second paragraph. I'm looking at, I've assisted our curator in organizing and refurbishing our collection. I would want to say, circle that word, look at the resume and see how big that collection is. Ideally, that person has quantified that information there as well. And then again, their experience in the words that they're saying, conservation, cataloging, digitizing, I would want to, again, see how they're quantifying all of that.
Well, and I would also say, even in that sentence, I have assisted our curator. This is one of those I sentences, but isn't only about I. This is about I did something with somebody else or worked in collaboration with or assisted or supported something else, which I think is a pretty honest statement to make because none of this work really happens single-handedly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that again, that it just, the I have assisted versus I have collaborated with curators on, it just changes it, the tone of it completely.
Absolutely. One thing that catches me here in this particular example is that this is somebody applying to a botanical garden for a job. And down here in their last paragraph, they say, though I do not have any formal work experience in botanical gardens specifically, I might have stopped right there. I might have stopped and said, so number one, why are you applying for this job if you don't have any experience in this kind of industry? Why are you wasting my time? So I'm wondering, Jose, is there a way of saying this? I'm not saying that they shouldn't apply for a job that they've never worked in that kind of institution before, but what's a different way of saying it?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, it's about the skills, right? And in this case, if the person has never worked in a botanical garden setting, they really should be talking about the skills that they have that are transferable into that industry. So I would, rather than doing it on the less of what I don't have, talk about what you do have and what you can bring to the table. And ideally, these are transferable skills.
Right. So that goes back to something we've talked about for at least 2 or 3 of our webinars now, is those kinds of skills and competencies. especially in an industry like museums where the job market is going to be increasingly challenging. How can we maximize those skills that we do have and apply them in a variety of institutions? So I want to move on to one other example here. And this is the full cover letter of what you've seen pieces of already. And again, Jose, this is somebody applying for a program officer position at a trust, a foundation, essentially. So what's your takeaway from this?
Oh man, I'm still scanning it.
That's okay.
I'm looking at the, yeah, again, the second paragraph for me, I somehow keep gravitating to the second paragraphs here, but they're saying about they've worked on the grantee side of the equation, as well as, right, on the grants and certification
Mm-hmm.
program. So they're presenting the skill that they've seen both sides of that process, which could be helpful here.
Yeah, and I think this is another example of this person really hitting home a variety of skills and experiences in a pretty compact cover letter, pretty tightly focused. So what we've illustrated here are just 3 examples. Again, just to reiterate, there is no one right way to do this, no one template. But generally speaking, a one-page formal business letter is really what you should be presenting as part of your application materials. I wrote here that it's an introduction to your resume, but Jose, I'm wondering, in your experience, are you looking at cover letters first and then resume, or vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, we go cover letter, then resume, yes. Because as I said, I think that gives us an indication of how someone can deliver a message, right? And that information. And then ideally that, the cover letter in a way sometimes is a bit of a tease to make you want to spend more time on that package, so that then you're gonna, again, as I said, if there are words that you're using there, I'm gonna then go to the resume to say, let me see how much of that word is in use, or, again, like the example of the collection, then how big was that collection? So we usually, for the most part, do cover letter, then follow up right after that with the resume.
And Jose, I dropped this cartoon in for you because I remember last week in our webinar on resumes, you talked about making it easy. So any of your materials, make it easier for the person who's reviewing your materials. Don't make it difficult. Don't make them dig through to try to find the meaning. And here in this cartoon, if you decode the symbolism to uncover the hidden prophecy, that's definitely something you don't want people to do when they're applying, right?
Yes, we definitely don't.
But to reiterate that this really needs to be a demonstration of the research you've done about the organization. If you've had the benefit of going to that institution, that museum, for example, great, but maybe you haven't. And so you've got to find some other ways of demonstrating connectivity, and also making sure that your knowledge, your skills, and your abilities are specific to this job. I see that Kim, earlier on in the comments, you mentioned that the cover letter style that I was opting for in this case could be utilized for federal government applications, in which applicants are often asked to indicate how they meet the KSAs, or knowledge, skills, and abilities. Yeah, so you may not be submitting a cover letter, but you certainly would be asked to talk explicitly about your knowledge, skills, and abilities. So this is another opportunity for you to express that. And just a quick reminder that the cover letter, as Jose and I have been talking about this time and last week, that your cover letter and your resume go together as one package to get you the interview. And we're going to be talking about interviews on Thursday. So if you haven't had a chance to register for that program, we encourage you to do so. And I have one last closing chat box question. It's sort of a trick question. And that is, can you just have a generic cover letter and copy paste information as needed from another cover letter? Go ahead and type into the chat box, yes, no, or it depends. All right, Catherine Somerville, no, capital letters and an exclamation mark. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yes, this is in light of this workshop. Yes, if we got nothing else across to you, that's really important. And I want to say that as I started off this program talking about when I was just out of graduate school, I didn't have a clue about any of this. And my resume was a disaster, and my cover letters were really poorly copy pasted versions that I would send out to anywhere and everywhere, whether I was qualified or someplace I thought I would like to work or not. And I couldn't figure out how come I was never getting any responses back. So Suzanne, your point, tweaking would take so much more time than starting from scratch. And Catherine, you could copy similar phrases. Yeah, so there's either way, you could start from scratch and think, okay, what am I trying to communicate to this institution about this job I'm applying for? There may be some generally transferable skills or experiences that you could communicate left over from another cover letter, but you want to be really careful that you're not just dropping in something that has no connectivity. Jose, I think you and I were talking earlier, and you mentioned looking at cover letters that clearly had nothing to do with your institution at all.
Yeah, I think this is, it's, you know, the idea, and it's very clear that some people have a template and they change 3 or 4 words, right, on each of those. And inevitably, you will forget to change one of them. And the resume will then say, I'm delighted, excited to be working at the Guggenheim. And I'm like, well, then that's where you're going to work, not here, right? That those are the moments where, you know, it could be that really, really important job. And because you've done this cut and paste process, you know, you've missed something or something is off on it. But yeah, I mean, also I've seen that in someone applying for a job that's not even advertised, that because they've just used a template that they have, and there's already a job listing, you know, with the name of the job. So I'm not, I just think that we're all human. We're bound to make a mistake somewhere. This is not where you want to make the mistake.
Right, right. So as you all know, for those of you who've been on other programs, Wendy Luke at the beginning of our series introduced us to the idea of Kaizen, small steps equal big impact. And I encourage you now, moving past this program, you may have a job you're applying for, or you may not know which direction you're going right now, but now's an opportunity for you to take a cover letter sample that you already have. Let's say a job you just recently applied for, and take a look at it more closely, and see if you actually got at those areas that we've talked about. Did you provide that first paragraph hook and all the required information in that first paragraph? In that main body of bridge between wires, in this some kind of close the deal for you. So hopefully you will take an opportunity to do that. I know we've had several comments and questions that have come in, and we'll kind of comb through here. So if you all want to stick around for a couple of moments, we'll continue to tackle some questions. But if you would please take a moment to give us your feedback on today's program. This will be familiar to those of you in previous webinars. Just to let us know if this program met your needs or not. And while we're doing that, I just want to give a big shout out to my colleague, Jose Ortiz. I think, Jose, I now owe you a couple of glasses of wine next time we're able to see each other in person in New York City. But thank you for spending your time and sharing your insight and your expertise today.
Of course, Greg. Thank you. And thanks everyone for participating. Good luck with your job searches.
And of course, thank you to my colleagues at the Mid-Atlantic Association of Museums and the Virginia Association of Museums, both terrific organizations. This is a terrific opportunity for us to all work together. I also want to thank all of you for participating. As Jose said, this is why we're doing this, for those of you who took the time out of your day to join us for this program. And if you had registered for previous programs in this series, you will have gotten an email from me with the recording links. If you did not register for previous programs, feel free to email me, reach out, and I will make sure you get the recording link. A quick reminder that Thursday's program on interviewing is the last in the series. So if you haven't had a chance to register for that, I encourage you to do so. On behalf of Purple Cow Career and Talent Development, this is Greg Stevens. Thanks a lot for joining us and have a terrific day.